CWPA Remote Professional Edition, where we take a look at water polo players and where they are today.
This man was a member of the Slippery Rock University men's varsity water polo team from 1981 to 1985. After graduating with a degree in marketing and management, he began his career in the food and beverage industry and has been in the same situation for more than 30 years. I'm so very pleased to be joined today by Bernie Campbell. Bernie, thanks so much for appearing on CWPA Remote.
Hey, thanks, George. It's great to be here.
Well, great to have you. So, how and why did you end up choosing Slippery Rock?
You know, it's a funny story. I was, our area, I live in the Reading area. We've got a little pocket of water polo here. And I got involved in water polo at a very young age. I think I started playing when I was 13 around here. And it was always my goal to go out to California and play water polo because, of course, California is the mecca of water polo. So I had an aunt that lived in Long Beach at the time, and I was going to go out, establish residency. You know, you could go to one of the state schools out there for free at the time if, if you were a resident. So I had this whole big plan in my mind. And then Coach Hunkler, Doc Hunkler from Slippery Rock, recruited the right person, my mom. So Doc developed a relationship with my mom and said, listen, you know, I know Bernie has his heart set on going out to California to play water polo. He said, but here's what I'm trying to do. So one of these weeks, I want you to come out and visit us. I wanted to visit the school. You know, I'm trying to build a team with, mostly East Coast players to be one of the first teams to make it to Division I Nationals from a tiny school. And so, of course, I listened to my mom. I went out and we visited the school. I fell in love with Doc, fell in love with the school, fell in love with what he was trying to do. I mean, there was up until Slippery Rock made it to NC2As, there was no school outside of Division I school that ever participated in NC2As for water polo. So we had a pretty lofty goal that we set of getting there, and Doc was terrific. I mean, He's been a great influence on my life, as almost anyone that has a coach would be. And I know you're familiar with Doc and his whole involvement with starting women's water polo. And,
yep.
Doc was the man back in the day. And listen, he took little old Slippery Rock out to the NC2A championships.
Well, he did. So you fell in love with it. You fell in love with him as a coach, but eventually you got there. What was your first practice like? Do you remember?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I thought we practiced hard in high school. But when I got out there, I was one of the few freshmen invited out to the team to start. So we got out early. It was us and the football team on campus at Slippery Rock. And, I was used to doing morning practice and then practice, but we started doing 3-a-days. And I have to tell you, I was exhausted. I mean, as anybody that's played this sport knows, it's not easy. It takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of pre-work, a lot of swimming, and then you throw water polo on top of that. And I think Doc put a whole new level to what commitment was when we got out to the Rock and started practicing.
Well, how about your first game? Do you remember that?
I do. First game I played in was actually against Fordham up in New York, and I can remember scoring my first goal. You know, I was the youngest guy on the team then, and I was at the point. I drove, and Doc Hunkler's son, Wynn, who was our whole person at the time, fed me a ball. He was nice enough to throw it to the freshman. He was a senior on the team, and I had an opportunity to score, and I did, and I never looked back. I mean, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed my experience there. And even that first year, the team was truly a team. You know, they accepted me. A lot of the players that Doc worked with, he called them homegrown players. They had never really played water polo before, and they learned while they were at Slippery Rock. They were all swimmers, and they just built their reputation and were at the Rock. And here I was, one of the younger guys coming in that had some playing experience. And again, they were very accepting, and everybody knew the goal from the time I got on campus. We knew what the goal was, to make it to Division I NC2As, and we all really helped each other to try to do that.
Well, when you think about all these memories, is there a single one that stands out as your very best memory of your water polo career at the Rock?
Yeah, I'll tell you, making it to NC2As, being out there with the Cals and the USCs and the UCLAs and the Loyolas and Brown and, I can't remember who else was out, Stanford, Pepperdine, all the big names in water polo. And then here we were, Slippery Rock University. I don't think those guys really knew who we were. But we sure worked very hard to get there. But I would say that was the pinnacle of our career, was getting out to NC2As and playing with the big boys. It was a lot of fun. And I learned a lot out there too. I mean, it was a whole different type of game being played in California than what we were used to. We because we were a Division II school, we didn't have a big budget for water polo. And we couldn't travel very much. We didn't make those trips out to California for, pre-season tournaments and all that type of stuff that happens today. I mean, we basically played East Coast water polo. We were lucky enough then to make it out to nationals. But it was a wake-up call when we got there. It was a real experience. It was a whole different level of play.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a big wake-up call. Any disappointments along the way?
I wish we would have played better. One of the things that I often talk about with my teammates is our goal was to get there, right? And I talk a lot about goals to my teams and the people that I work with too. And I think one of the mistakes that we made was, our focus was on getting there, and we did. But then when we got there, I think there was a little bit of a letdown. I think I wish that the goal would have been a little bit more than just getting there. And listen, it was nobody's fault. I mean, here we were, little Slippery Rock, Division II school. Getting there was a huge accomplishment. But as I think back on it and I reflect on it, I wish maybe the goal was, take a game or two out of Division I nationals. And I'm not saying we would have beat one of the California teams while we were there, but I think we probably would have played a little bit better. Just getting there, again, we had that. I think there was a letdown after we got there, and I don't believe we played to our full potential while we were there.
Right. Well, you mentioned reflecting on certain things. Generally, I'd be interested in hearing your reflections on your water polo career at Slippery Rock, including any situation that was particularly amusing or unusual during your time with the Rock.
You know what, George? I don't believe that we have enough time today to talk about all the amusing stories.
Well, then you can just pick the best one or two.
Yeah, there's so many memories, and when we all get together or when a couple of us talk, I mean, these memories come up. They get, the stories get wilder and they get bigger every time we tell the stories.
Of course.
But, we were a team that, literally when we would go away for a tournament, we slept on the gym floor. I mean, we didn't stay in a hotel. We were on the gym floor because we didn't have a budget. And I think a lot of that, it built a lot of character. Even when we got to NC2A, since we were Division II, NC2A only paid for our flight. So we started staying out there in a daycare center at a church. So if you can imagine, I mean, I'm 6'2", now 230. Back then I was probably 165 soaking wet. Couldn't gain weight to save my life. But I'm one of the smaller guys on the team, right? And here we are with all this little daycare furniture, the little chairs and stuff sitting around everywhere. But I think that was kind of a funny experience for us. We really had to overcome some challenges as we traveled.
Right. Well, as I like to tell all my friends and associates who remember, what I looked like when I played, it's only 2 pounds a year.
Yeah.
So before we get into your business, scenario in specifics, how did you get into the food and beverage industry?
So the one of the companies that I represent, I basically have my own business. It's Bernie Campbell, LLC. I'm a consultant, but one of my biggest consultants, I just got off a call, so this is still behind me. It's Whirley Industries. They do injection molded and blow molded plastics Basically, they tailor for the food service industry. When I was growing up, I was fortunate enough that my parents had a place in Stone Harbor, New Jersey. So we had a condo there that was right on the bay. It was a great place to work out, by the way, in the off season, because I could swim laps back and forth, this little shelter haven that we had. But there was a gentleman that was there. And since I was about 12 years old, he said, someday you're going to work with me. Someday you're going to work with me, going through high school, going through college. Someday you're going to work with me. Someday you're going to work with me. And finally that day came. I was working at a company called Pen Emblem, and it was after my first year, and we had signed a contract that I would be paid a certain percentage of wage, just like any commission salesman might be. And I grew the territory. I almost tripled their territory that first year. So when I went in for my performance review, they basically said, listen, we can't pay you this much. It's too much. So, we're just not going to do it, and you're going to have to live with that. So, and this is a true story. I got in the car, their company car, and I'm driving home. And at the time there was car phones. There were no cell phones. You're old enough to remember those big block things in the car.
Uh-huh.
So I get a call, and it's this guy, Howard, from Stone Harbor. And he said, Bernie, are you ready to work with me? Now, remember, I hadn't talked to anybody. I had just literally got in the car, turned it on, and started driving home from Willow Grove, PA. So I hadn't even talked to my dad yet. I hadn't talked to anybody. And Howard calls me at this exact moment in time and says, are you ready to work for me now? So I said, yes. I called my dad. I said, Dad, can you pick me up, at Howard's place on the way down? I'm going to turn my rent, the company car in, and I'm quitting Pen Emblem right now. So I did. And Howard worked with this company called Whirley-DrinkWorks. And again, they were involved in the food service industry. So what we basically do, so all you guys know, is we develop programs for partners to try to grow revenue on the food and beverage side. Where you see me the most is if you go to a theme park today and you get a souvenir bottle, mm-hmm. and you pay X amount for it and you get free refills all day or free refills all season. I kind of helped pioneer that program. That's us. And right now, for most parks, that small little souvenir beverage bottle is second only to the gate in generating revenue for most theme parks. So it's become a very important part of their program. The other thing that you guys might know me for is something a lot of people make fun of me for, but in the day, if you ever went to a Broadway show, or a show at any theater, even in Philadelphia, maybe at the Forest Theater or the Walnut Street Theater in Philly, you could never take a drink back to your seat at any of these performance theaters.
Yep.
So I came up with the concept, or pioneered the concept, of these little souvenir cups with lids on that allowed people to take drink back to their seats. So on Broadway, they now call them adult sippy cups. but I'm that guy. I'm the guy that pioneered that, developed that, and people were able to generate 8 to 10 times the revenue they used to on food and beverage with that type of item. So those are the type of things that we do. We try to pair souvenir items with a food and beverage product to help generate revenue for our partners.
So you have your own company, as you mentioned, and you're a bit of an anomaly in today's world because you've been at Whirley and you've had your own company for over 30 years. Is having your own company part of putting patents or funneling different revenue from your sales side? What's the relationship?
So the relationship with Whirley is that they're basically the manufacturer. And it's my job to go out and try to help them generate as much business as possible for their injection molding and blow molding business. So, we're trying to sell programs. I've got some counterparts around the country that kind of do the same thing that I do. And I do have some other manufacturers that I work with. But again, my thought process is typically around food and the food and beverage area, and how can we develop programs, whether it's with popcorn, or maybe it's some type of, if you go to Hershey Park, they have these king size shakes inside of a souvenir vessel. That's kind of it. It's fun. I mean, I have a tremendous amount of fun with what I'm doing. I will be forthright and honest in saying that it's not fun right now.
Yeah.
What I quickly learned during COVID is that most of the places that I work with, it's where people gather. I do a lot of work with places like Madison Square Garden, Radio City Music Hall, the Beacon Theater, all the a lot of the theme parks in the country, all the theaters in New York. We do some work with convenience stores. So it's all the businesses. We do work with restaurants. All the businesses that are being hurt really badly now is who I work with. And it's been a tough year. And it's one of those things. You talk about relating stuff to water polo. Having tough years or having tough games is something that happens to everyone, right? Everybody does not have their best game all the time. And I think this year with COVID, it's really made me think about growing up in the sport and recovering after that bad game and recovering after that bad season. I think that my career in water polo has really helped me stabilize and adjust to what's happening here with COVID this year.
That's great to hear, and the experience obviously has helped you. I'd like to go back and just focus in a bit on the whole invention side,
Sure.
and development side, because I'm sitting here thinking, all right, he's got to invent these beverage containers for people, especially when they're at theme parks. So take us through from pre-concept of what you need to do through to, final stage distribution. And also tell me that, and tell our viewers, when you finally get to a demo sample, do you actually go on the rides and try them out to make sure they don't leak and fly in your face and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, I'll start with that. The end of that question is yes, I am fortunate enough that when I travel to a lot of these places around the country, I do get to ride the rides and I do get to stay and see some of the plays and do that stuff. So it is certainly a great benefit. As far as inventing products, there are a few products over the years that I've actually invented from scratch by myself. Radio City Music Hall, I did something at one time. I don't think I still have it here on my shelf, but we called it a rockatini. So it was a martini glass with the rocket legs on it. Mm-hmm. I developed a specific lunch bag for the National Zoo down in Washington, D.C., where I went from start to finish. But I have to be honest with you, Whirley's been such a great partner for me. We really work together on these projects, and we try to come up with items that are going to work not just for one person, but a myriad of items. And I've got a counterpart in California. His name's Jim Quinlan. Jim and I work together very closely. He's been a great partner, a great thought partner for me. Jim does a lot of the stuff. If you've been to Disney World or Disneyland lately, they've got all these great custom popcorn containers, maybe that looks like the stuff from Star Wars or, a Mickey Christmas tree or something. He's done a tremendous job, probably better than I have, at developing products from scratch. My strength seems to be taking a product that maybe exists or that we build and then building a program around it. This is something that's very popular at theme parks right now. The nice thing about this is we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we go to a theme park with this. It's the decorating capability, the printing on it that we can change. So we can build a tool and we can have it last a very long time. And the differentiator is the printing that's on there. And we've kind of wrote the script for most of the theme parks. There's a playbook now. We know what it takes to be successful. We know, where they need to be from a cost standpoint, where they need to be when they charge retail for something. So, it's all about perceived value and creating perceived value for their guests. And the nice thing is we don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. There's a playbook. There's a couple different items that work very well. And, we can get a lot of theme parks to use the same item. Now, every now and then we do, like I said, Jim does a great job creating products from scratch. I get to do it sometimes, but I've really learned that if I focus on what's important and helping the client drive revenue with something. It doesn't have to be different every time. It's the perceived value of the program has to be there for the guest that walks through their gate. So it's that's kind of, I know the question you were asking, and I wish I did more of that, but it's not really my core competency. My core competency is developing a program and then developing it and making it work so that it works multiple places, and it's idiot proof. I mean, anybody can do it. And again, the playbook exists already, so there's no reason why, whether you're a theme park or a water park or a zoo or a family entertainment center, we know this stuff works. We have enough data that I can go around and prove it. You just have to execute it on your side, and it's my job to make sure that you execute it properly. Some people have their own idea of what execution would be, and just like in a game, some players have different ideas of how to execute a play. But at the end of the day, the coach has it drawn up on the board, and if you don't execute it the right way, it's not going to work. It's the same thing here. We've got the play up on the chalkboard, and we know what works, and it's my job to make sure that they run the play properly.
Well, following along the theme park theme, for lack of a better way of expressing it, you recently became chairman of a rather significant organization. Tell us about that.
I did. I am the chair of the IAPA Food and Beverage Committee. That is the organization which oversees all the theme parks in the world. It's a global organization, and I was fortunate enough to be asked to be chair. I believe, and I'm 99.9% sure, I am the first vendor partner who's ever been chair of the IAPA Food and Beverage Committee. Everyone else has been, a food director or a VP of foods from a park. So they've entrusted me with a lot of responsibility, and I believe it's because my creed is to help people, and I've really made it a mission of mine to try to be as helpful to the theme park industry as I can. And so I'm very proud of the distinction, and I oversee their global committee. And basically what we have charge of is putting together the education and the sessions that happen each year for the Global Expo down in Orlando. There's typically anywhere from 35 to 40,000 people that show up from around the world at this expo. And we've got education sessions that we teach. So I've got to help set the programming for those sessions. And throughout the year, we do webinars, educational webinars for the constituency. We're getting ready to do one now on mobile ordering. The COVID has really kind of compressed the time frame with technology and accelerated technology that's needed in the industry. And because of touchless and all that type of thing, mobile ordering has probably been on everybody's radar screen for that 5 to 8 year planning period. But with COVID, it's really accelerated that and shrunk it down. And wouldn't surprise me if next year, and certainly in 2022, you'll see every theme park with some type of mobile ordering. And that's the topic that we'll be discussing next in January for the constituency.
Well, that's really exciting. And certainly, as you mentioned, the 5 to 8 year plans have now become 5 to 8 month plans. Yeah. So good luck with that. 30 plus years in the same situation. And I would be totally remiss, especially given our theme of this series, to not mention the fact that for those same 30 plus years, you have been heavily involved with the Kingfish Water Polo Foundation. Tell us about how you got involved and what you're doing.
Yeah, so Kingfish Water Polo Foundation, a good friend of mine, Dr. Rudy Ruth, who I know you guys know very well at the CWPA, and probably most people that are involved with water polo around the country know Dr. Ruth and his passion for water polo. He and I played together for a lot of years. We were very close teammates and very close friends. Dr. Ruth is one of my closest friends right now. As we were growing up, I think it was 1988. We're out of college, we're playing, and Rudy and I sat down with a bunch of people, but kind of he and I hatched the idea of how do we give back? What can we do to help grow the sport of water polo in the area? how do we start a grassroots effort with some of the younger kids to make sure that there's a feeder system for all the different schools in our area. So that's when Dr. Ruth and I and Kyle Zieber, Chuck Bartlett, there's a couple other people, and I'm sorry, guys, I if you're listening to this, I know there's more that deserve credit, but we all sat around a table and we came up with the Kingfish Water Polo Foundation, and that's what we are. It was our thought to give back to the community, start a grassroots effort, and that's what we did for many years, for 30 years. I don't think there's a water polo player in this area, maybe in the tri-state area, that hasn't touched Kingfish water polo in one way or another. Back in the day, Bill, you're probably familiar with Bill Bartle down at North Penn. I know Billy kind of used the Kingfish model when he started his program and his summer program down there. So really, it was just a way to keep water polo alive. We were afraid that if young kids weren't exposed to water polo, that the sport was going to die. And we didn't want that to happen, because we knew in the back of our minds that some of the finest educational institutions in this country have a water polo team. And, it was our goal to try to get as many players as we could playing college water polo. And if they could get some type of scholarship or some type of recognition for that, all the better. But, unfortunately for some people, we both know that if you've got a person that's applied to Princeton and everything is exactly equal, grades, experience, whatever it is, all that type of stuff, and one of those players plays water polo, guess who's getting into Princeton? 9 times out of 10, it's going to be that person playing water polo. So even back in the early days, we kind of had those thoughts. And plus, we just wanted the kids to have fun. Water polo is a fun game. I think they call, I forget what what U.S. water polo and you guys call the younger kids splash ball now. Rudy and I we developed a version of splash ball 30, 35 years ago. I mean, we took kids that didn't know how to swim just to get them used to the water and moving around in the water. We played in a very shallow pool so that it was open to everyone. You didn't have to know how to swim. And we were hoping that if kids really fell in love with the game and, they got used to it and whatever, that they would take the time to learn how to swim and they would continue on and play. And of course, as because I know you played, it's much easier to get around the water swimming in it than it is walking against it. So the kids learn pretty quickly that if they wanted to be better and be good at the sport, they were going to have to learn to swim a little better. So something I'm very proud of. Unfortunately, COVID put a little monkey wrench into Kingfish this year. And we've also had some, Rudy and I had a terrific relationship with our local school district for many years. And, boards change and thought processes change. Our strong thought process is we wanted to grow the sport for everyone. So it didn't matter what high school you went to, didn't matter what junior high, everyone was welcome to play Kingfish and be involved so that we could feed different teams, players. Unfortunately, there's a board of directors or a board up at the school now that doesn't have that same philosophy. They feel like everything should just go to, everything should happen to the local school right here. And Rudy and I both know that, that's great. Our school is going to survive, right? We know that they'll be playing water polo forever, but you can't play yourself at the end of the day. You've got to help other teams thrive so that you've got competition and people to play. I probably droned on too long there.
Not at all.
George, but I'm very passionate about it. And next step for Kingfish, we're not sure what that is yet, George. COVID, we've had to take a year off. Rudy and I will get back together again and try to decide how we can best help water polo move forward in this area. And I'm sure at some point you'll see Kingfish emerge again as the force that it's been for the last 30 plus years.
Well, that would be great. We've talked a bit about your college career, and we've talked about a bit of your business career. Be interested, and our viewers would be, to find out if there's anything you can say about how your college water polo career And you did reference it once or twice already, but specifically how your college water polo career impacted your business career.
Yeah, geez. Honestly, George, it's probably not just college. I know that's what you wanted to focus on, but I think water polo, just from when I started up until now, you know, and I'm going to say something next, and believe me, I know that I'm terrible right now, but I was just talking to Rudy about this the other day. This is the first summer in 45 years that I did not play water polo. Okay, so that's a long time. So this sport, it's not just college. This sport has been ingrained in me forever. But at my college career specifically, when I was trying, or they were trying to mold me, and I was trying to mold myself and build myself into something. It takes a lot of dedication and hard work to be a water polo player. It takes a lot of dedication and hard work to play any sport. I feel like water polo is one of those sports that's a little bit tougher to play because you get the water as an obstacle, right? I mean, I can still go out and run around the basketball court and play with a lot of my friends that are good with basketball and not embarrass myself. They can't do the same thing. They can't, I just can't call 20 of my friends and say, hey, let's go play a water polo game. Mm-hmm. They can't do that. They don't have the skill set to do that, but I do. But it's the hard work. It's, when I'm in meetings, or I'm talking with partners, or I'm negotiating with buying groups, things happen in that room. You have to be able to adjust on the fly, right? You've got to be able to make quick decisions. You can't let people fluster you. When you're playing water polo, you're in a game. At least for me, I know one of the things I really liked was being able to get someone so upset that they got kicked out, right? I mean, that was one of the goals. How do I piss this guy off so much that he does something to me that forces him to get ejected, and my team's a man up? Well, on the opposite side of that, you've got people doing that to you constantly in your life in different ways. And I think that water polo really helped me look at the big picture and say, okay, listen, I know this guy's bothering the heck out of me, or, I know these people across from the table are needling me and trying to whittle me down. But you've got to look at the big picture and say, okay, when we come out of this, how do we get the win out of this? And you can't get a win if you're not there. So if you get upset and they throw you off your game, it's impossible for you to win. So you've got to keep your cool no matter what they throw at you, make good decisions. And listen, sometimes every decision's not the right decision, but that's okay. You've got to learn from your mistakes. A lot of the people that I work with, I often say to them, listen, it's okay to make mistakes. That's how you learn, but just don't make the same one twice, right? I mean, because then it means you're not learning anything. And even in water polo, George, you've been through this. You've been guarding a guy and he gets the best of you. He does something on a drive and, it enabled him to get open and score. Well, the next time down, you've seen that move now, right? You've got to adjust to that, and you've got to try to prevent him from doing that. And if he just is able to continually do that, there's no sense you being in the water. Same thing in business. You've got to be ready for those. And if someone keeps beating you every time, you don't deserve to be on the other side of the table. If you can't learn how to adjust and make the adjustments and make them, in your favor, then the business world's really going to be tough for you.
Well, those are excellent examples of how specific things in a college water polo game can help you later on. Many people in your station in life, if they were being interviewed, they would get asked the question of, so what would you tell your younger self? But I like to approach it the opposite way. I'd like to hear what you think the Bernie Campbell college water polo player would tell Bernie Campbell now.
Boy, the college water polo player. That's a good question, George. I think that I would tell myself to make sure that I capitalize on my strengths, that you're not going to be great at everything, but now that you're older, you have a team of people around you, like you had a team of water polo players around you, and it's their job to try to help you be better, right? Your team knows what your strengths are and they know what your weaknesses are. I know what a lot of my team strengths are and a lot of my team weaknesses are, and I try to capitalize on people's strengths. I make sure if there's something I need, let's say from a design phase, I know who on my team I can really count on for design, but maybe not so much count on for engineering of a product, right? So I know who to go there, and they also know my strengths. So my younger person might tell my older person to just make sure that you realize what your strengths and weaknesses are, and it's okay to have weaknesses. Everybody has them, but really build on those strengths, and wherever you're weak, don't be afraid to get help.
That's great. Well, lastly, we have many high school water polo players and their parents watching who are thinking about college. We have college water polo players who are thinking about careers after they graduate. What's a critical piece of advice you could give them about the process and the relation between college water polo and their future career?
Listen, if you want to be good at anything, and don't get me wrong, I was rarely the best player in the water, right? But I was an important cog on a whole team. But you've got to be dedicated. Nothing comes easy. At least it never did for me. It's a lot of hard work. Specifically to your answer, when you play a sport at school, at least I think it helped me. It helped me to focus more because, there was a lot of demands on your time. We had very little time during the season to procrastinate and put things off, and you've got to do things right away. And that's one thing, George, I have certainly taken with me in my business career. I don't procrastinate. I don't put things off. A lot of people say that they talk about having balls in the air, and I seem to have the fewest balls in the air of people that they talk to and they remember. And that may be true, but I'm trying to always get rid of that ball. I'm trying to always score a goal with that ball and go on to the next thing. And just get things done. So, focus on getting things done. It's more important to focus on getting it done than it is to have a million things that you never complete, right? And even though you're going to spend a lot of time, if you're a college athlete, with your sport, you do have to think ahead a little. I always implore kids to do internships, right? Do internships for a couple different reasons, because everyone's looking for experience when you get out of college now. I know some of you younger guys that are just getting out, you're applying for jobs. That's the first thing they say is, what experience do you have? And if your answer is, well, I just graduated from college, I don't have any experience, that's not good enough anymore. Do an internship, do it for a couple reasons. Do it to get that experience, and also do it because you might be at a station or your point in your college career where you're not exactly sure what you want to do. But if you do an internship and you don't like something, you absolutely know that you don't want to do that anymore. So, make sure that you take advantage of, there's a lot of companies out that will do internships and give you that. I stress that with both of my daughters. Both of my daughters probably did as many or more internships as they were going through school as any of the children I know. And guess what? They had a pretty easy time finding employment when they got out of college, because they had a lot of experience doing a lot of different things. And that's what recruiters like to see. And then you throw water polo or you throw athletics on top of that. Remember, we talked about Princeton and getting in. If there's person A and person B plays water polo, they get it. Listen, if you've got experience and you're person A, and this person B doesn't have the work experience, who do you think is getting it? Especially if you've got athletic experience on top of that, because employers today They know what type of dedication it takes to play a sport at the collegiate level. And I don't care what division you're in. I don't care where you're at. It's at every level in college. It takes a tremendous amount of commitment and dedication and discipline to play a sport. So you already have one leg up on everybody else out there. Why not take that extra step and give yourself one additional leg up to everyone else that's going to be hunting for a job out there?
Well, that's great advice, and I hope our viewers have taken your advice to heart. He followed up his successful career as a water polo player at Slippery Rock to become a leader in the food and beverage industry. Bernie Campbell has been my guest today on CWPA Remote. Bernie, thanks so much for sharing your insights on college water polo and its effect on business careers.
George, thank you very much for the invite today. Very passionate about water polo, very passionate about what I do. So certainly this was a pleasure for me, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
As I with you. Until next time on CWPA Remote, this is George Gross Jr. wishing all of our viewers the very best in and out of the pool.